show. All the coverage right here. Here's Ashleigh.
Welcome to the show. It's great to have you. Happy Monday. We begin the week, and boy, do we have a lot to start with. Like Casey Anthony is on your screen talking about her daughter, about her parents. I kid you not. I nearly choked on my toast this morning. I have waited a decade and a half to hear this woman speak. Tonight, you are going to hear, and it is not short, and it is detailed, and apparently she's got a new career. She wants you to know about it, and she wants you to be a part of it for $10 a month. Is it a catch? Is it real? What exactly did she say in this car that was getting so hot she was sweating? All of that coming in just a moment. And trust me, there may be a moment where you say, is she tone deaf? Does she even know what she just said? That's coming. Also, Luigi Mangione just keeps on giving weird stories, bizarre headlines. This time, it is possible that he has a copycat because there is another insurance CEO who has been targeted and shots have been fired again. Were they in that guy's honor? Did that shadowy black figure on your screen try to take out another insurance CEO? Where did this happen? Why did it happen? Who is that guy or girl? They're still on the loose tonight. I've got the whole story for you, all the details. It's just ahead in a moment. And then this one, I did not see this coming. I follow every moment of the Menendez brothers' story, every legal filing. I read the filings. I read the footnotes. I did not see this coming. You know already what I've been reporting on nonstop, right? You know that he's got 3 pathways to freedom. The resentencing is coming up in just a couple weeks. Not looking great, but who knows? And then that whole habeas corpus, can I get a new trial? Really not looking good. And then the governor, like clemency, the king signs, you're free. That's not looking so bad, okay? But now tonight, some of the evidence that we had before that went into that habeas corpus, new trial, not looking so good. Well, there's news on it. The Menudo boy band member named Roy Rossello, do you remember that just blew headlines wide open when he said, excuse me, but like 3 decades ago, I was also a sexual assault victim of Jose Menendez. And it really made waves. It led to that habeas corpus filing. The evidence from Roy Rossello is in the filing. The DA says it doesn't count, which led Roy Rossello as an adult now to say, I'm sorry. And it led him to say something to us today, which was what I did not expect to hear. I was not counting on this. I did not know he was going to say this. But his people are telling us that there is more coming, a lot more about Jose Menendez attacking Roy Rossello like it didn't just happen once, and it didn't just happen here. I got a lot to get you up to speed on, so let's just get going so I can fit it all in if I can. I really never thought that I was going to see this day, but my friends, today is the day, and I am seeing it. The most hated mom in America wants you, and she wants to be your lawyer. Actually, Casey Anthony wants to be your legal advocate because she's not a member of the bar. But do not take it from me. Take it from Ms. Casey Anthony herself. Over the weekend, she posted her first ever TikTok video saying that she now plans to, quote, advocate for herself. And in a jaw-dropping moment, she also says she plans to advocate for Kaylee, as in Kaylee Anthony, as in the daughter she was accused of murdering. She said a whole lot more than all of that. I'm going to play everything that she said in just a moment. But Casey has also set up an online newsletter. Oh, thanks. And she's created an email address for anybody who wants her, quote, professional advice. In her video, she explains that she's been, quote, in the legal field, end quote, since 2011. And that, I remember 2011 because that was the year she was acquitted. Need I remind you of first-degree murder of that little 2-year-old toddler of hers. And here's the part that I'm struggling with, among other things. She shot her selfie video in her car, and right off the top, sweating, she said that she was so hot she was going to, quote, sweat to death. I know. I had the same reaction And a lot of viewers did too. And in fact, a lot of viewers had the reaction, is this a cruel joke? And that's a quote. The prosecutors believe that Casey drove around for days in the Florida heat with Kaylee's body decomposing in the trunk back in June of 2008. When police searched that trunk later on, they found a strand of Kaylee's hair, as well as maggots and the smell of death. The video is over 3 minutes long, but it is fascinating to watch, especially her demeanor and how much she's changed in the last 14 years. I want you to see if you can detect any anger or any resentment.
I sweat to death. Okay. Today is Saturday, March 1st, 2025. This is my first of probably many recordings on a series that I'm starting. I am a legal advocate. I am a researcher. I've been in the legal field since 2011. And in this capacity, I feel that it's necessary, if I'm going to continue to operate appropriately as a legal advocate, that I start to advocate for myself and also advocate for my daughter. For those of you who don't know, my name is Casey Anthony. My daughter is Kaylee Anthony. My parents are George and Cindy Anthony. This is not about them. This is not in response to anything that they have said or done. That's not to say that I'm not going to respond at some point to some of the things that they have said and done. The whole point of this is for me to begin to reintroduce myself. I'm doing this both personally for me, but in a professional capacity. Moving forward, the majority of what you will see will be me speaking in a professional capacity. My goal is to continue to help give a voice to people, to give people tools and resources that they can utilize so they actually know where they can turn to. So with that, please join me on Substack. If you have questions, I will set up an email address where we can correspond directly. Up until this point, that has never happened. And it's only going to be on a limited basis regarding legal issues, legal matters. One of the main reasons that I'm doing this, there are people close to me who have been targeted and attacked recently. There are also people close to me who have had some recent things occur. And when necessary, people needed to step up, myself included. So as a proponent for the LGBTQ community, for our legal community, women's rights, I feel that it's important that I use this platform that was thrust upon me and now look at as a blessing as opposed to the curse that it has been since 2008. With that, these aren't going to be perfect. They're not going to be edited. Most of the time, they're not going to be short. But I am proverbially standing in the light, embracing this piece, still going to keep my privacy intact. So you will get very comfortable with my car. And I will explain in great detail why it's so important for people to protect their privacy. It's not just important to public figures, it's even more important to private individuals. And with the current climate in our country especially, it's that much more important, which is why I am utilizing the Substack platform. Yes, I am advertising this and publishing this on TikTok, possibly also through other meta platforms, but my intention is to separate from that and showcase even more why Substack is such an important resource for people to utilize moving forward. Anyway, I appreciate your time, and we'll see how this goes.
Casey Anthony has more than 44,000 followers on TikTok. And that video that you just saw, that's got more than 18,000 likes and climbing. The newsletter that I mentioned, that's not free. That thing's on Substack, and it costs $10 a month or $100 a year. And so far, about 700 people have subscribed. That's a lot of math. That's a lot of dollars every month for Casey Anthony. I'm joined now by someone who knows a lot about Casey Anthony's experience in the legal field and actually had a front row seat for much of it. Brad Conway is an attorney, an actual attorney, who represented Casey's parents, George and Cindy Anthony. Brad, my gosh, it's been a long time. It's really good to see you again. I hope you're doing well.
It sure has, Ashleigh. It's always great to be here with you.
Let me just start with your reaction to this. I mean, jaw dropper, the video, the promises, the legal advocate, all of it.
Well, it is, but Casey Anthony, she's the perpetual victim, but she's always out there, pitching her own story, her own sad story. And here she is talking about being thrust into this again and using it to better other people. It's just a bunch of BS. And it's Casey Anthony's bid to remain relevant. She's always got a little hook. She disappears for a little while, but then she always shows up again. And this one is all about money.
On that last note, money, I will say that she has not had it easy for the last decade plus, right? I mean, it's Casey Anthony. It's kind of hard to get a job. So I think she has struggled as a photographer, as a private investigator, as an assistant. And so this may be her effort at maybe thinking there's a new generation of folks out there who may not have that same feeling. She may not have that stigma with them. If that's the case, is there any truth or is there any value to the fact that she thinks she can be a legal advocate?
I don't believe so, Ashleigh. For 30 years, I've been a criminal defense lawyer, and I have been a victim advocate for people, victims of violent crimes. There was George and Cindy Anthony that I represented, and then most recently, the Brittany Drexel case that was recently solved. A 17-year-old girl that was abducted, raped, and murdered in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So, to jump in and to be a legal advocate for somebody, first of all, it's not a paying job usually, and it requires knowledge, it requires experience, it requires ethics, and it requires morals. Casey Anthony has none of these things, and nobody wants legal advice from somebody who can only offer them advice on how to hide a body and make up ridiculous lies about how it got there.
Do you think there may be any other motivation other than money, like, say, attention? Because she's really been avoiding attention since 2011.
I think attention is always a motivation of hers. It's a passive aggressive approach to it, though. It's poor me. I don't want the attention. And she has done a good job of laying low, but she surfaces for her own purposes. And this purpose is about money. It's about money and nothing else, because who is going to hire her for legal advice? She's not a lawyer, so she can't give legal advice. So her role as an advocate, you don't have to be a lawyer to be an advocate, but who wants Casey Anthony advocating for you? What does she have to offer you in terms of actual credible legal advice? And then who's going to take her seriously?
So she made a comment that really stood out to me, and let me just read it. It was about her parents, George and Cindy. She says, "My parents are George and Cindy Anthony. This isn't about them. This is not in response to anything they've said or done." But then she goes on to suggest, "I will deal with that soon," as if to say, I've got words to say in reaction to things George and Cindy have said. What did you take that to mean, given the fact that you were George and Cindy's lawyer?
And this is why I say that this is about money. She talks about wanting to be a legal advocate, about using her infamy, to help others. Poor Casey, rising above the ashes to help other people. But that's not at all what's it about, because there she is talking about George and Cindy and Kaylee. And that's the hook for people. People want to know what really happened to Kaylee Anthony, and they want to know. She blamed her father, criminally implicated him in the death of her daughter. And so she says it's not about them, but she makes sure to let you know that she might address it anyway. And that's what brings people in, because that's what they want to know.
It really feels as though the rift is absolutely irrevocable between George and Casey, but maybe not Cindy and Casey, which is why everything is so uncomfortable. I feel for George and Cindy. I think they were just tread under that bus over and over again in that courtroom. And I I sat there in that courtroom with you watching this every day. It was heartbreaking and preposterous, the story that she presented. But she said in this video, I'm here to advocate for Kaylee. It was the first time I had heard her say Kaylee's name and my daughter Kaylee, probably since 2011.
Well, what would she advocate on behalf of Kaylee for? Casey Anthony is the only person in this world that knows what really happened to her own daughter, Kaylee. George doesn't know, but that's who Casey blamed. So how is she going to advocate for the daughter that really she's the one that disposed of Kaylee as though she were a pile of trash? So how is she going to advocate? What does she have to offer? Nothing other than the truth, which we know Casey Anthony is not capable of telling the truth.
That we know. That is undeniable. I mean, living through her lies, I needed therapy. Just the exquisite amount of lying that this woman was capable of, the people she was capable of sinking. It was just traumatic. So one other weird tangent here. She said she's doing this to fight Trump because she has a rainbow tattoo, and she says she's advocating as well on behalf of LGBTQ community. But going up against Donald Trump and saying, I'm going to fight Trump, she's going to use her influence to resist. Where do you think that's going to go?
That's a really good question because, hiring Casey Anthony to give you legal advice or be your legal advocate is like punching a hole in your boat to get a better breeze. And the only thing that the Trump administration has done at this point is prohibit transsexual men, biological men, from competing against women. So what is it that she actually thinks she has to offer the LGBTQ community? There are hordes, leagues of lawyers and wonderful advocates out there to help this community. Casey Anthony is not one of them. They don't need her.
They may not want her as well. But Brad, this has been, we waited way too long. You and I need to not, be apart for this many years. I'm so glad to see you again. You look terrific. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Ashley. Good seeing you.
See you again soon, I hope. All right, folks. If you want to learn more about other true crime cases just like Casey Anthony's, check out my new podcast, Drop Dead Serious. My hour-long conversation with Wendy Williams is dropping this Thursday, and boy, did she say a few things about drinking, like how it's affected her, if it had anything to do with the conservatorship. Check it out. There's the QR code. It drops again on Thursday. And still to come tonight, Luigi Mangione is in the headlines again. We know his fans want to help pay his legal bills. We know they show up for court like he's Taylor Swift. But is Luigi Mangione now inspiring copycat attacks, even murder? We'll tell you what happened and to whom next.
Risk of death or stroke. Report fever, stiff muscles, and confusion, which can be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High blood sugar can lead to coma or death, weight gain, increased cholesterol, unusual urges, dizziness on standing, falls, seizures, trouble swallowing, or sleepiness may occur.
Rexulti helped reduce my mom's symptoms.
Take action for your loved one. Talk to their doctor today about Rexulti.
It is one thing to admire an alleged assassin like Luigi Mangione, to make him a combo pop star and folk hero in one curly-haired loafer-wearing package. But it is entirely something else to copy him. To be clear, we don't know for sure that whoever shot up the home of an insurance CEO in Oregon was inspired by Luigi Mangione, but it cannot be ruled out either. I'm talking about Chip Terhune. He's the head of a not-for-profit workers' comp provider called State Accident Insurance Fund. Police say a hooded gunman fired 3 bullets into Terhune's front door and windows while he slept. Thank God no one was hurt. And the gunman, well, that's another story. That person got away, but later the company received an email threat reportedly from that same shadowy person. Terhune says, and I quote, the email references knowledge of employees and relatives' names and addresses. And here's what I have to say about that. Whoever fired those bullets might want to think long and hard about where Luigi Mangione is tonight. He is locked up in a place that is scary on the best of days, and today ain't one of the best days, because it seems like the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn is on a modified lockdown after a race riot involving more than 40 people. Apparently the brawl didn't happen where the high-profile inmates like Luigi and Diddy are housed, but visiting privilege are suspended across the board, except for your lawyer. This is where I bring in Gene Borello. He's a former mob enforcer who served time in the very same unit where Luigi is housed. And as of now, Luigi's not allowed to have visitors in that unit. Gene, good to have you back on the show. Thanks so much for doing this. What is a modified operation plan? What does that look like?
So if it's a lockdown, the whole building is locked down. It means it's a security risk, which means they will not let you out. Under any circumstances, you have to be escorted by a cop to go anywhere. Like you said, just for a lawyer, you'll only be able to be escorted to the lawyer, and that's it. Which means that if it is locked down, there will be no, in order to shower, you have to come out the cells one by one, and you get like 3 minutes each to even shower. So that means that is, like you just said, it's a race riot. So they can't let nobody out until they know for sure that people aren't going to attack each other when the cells open up.
So, I mean, it sounds like it's miserable. If you can't have any freedom within an arrangement where you have no freedom, it sounds like this is going to make a lot of people mad.
Well, they don't really care. And let me tell you what's going to happen here. It could even go, if it was gang members, let's just say if it's like two big, powerful gangs that are killing each other, they'll lock it down countrywide in the feds. They won't let nobody out in the feds because when gangs beef with each other, it goes through the whole system. So if the MS-13s kill somebody that belongs to the Serranos are going to say, any MS-13 we see, we're going to kill them. So they won't let nobody out to the country unless these beefs are squashed. So they'll make shot callers meet each other. And basically with the cops, this is crazy, I know, to make the beef, to squash the beef unless nobody comes out. That's just the way it goes.
Let me ask you, we sorry to interrupt. We heard that, where Luigi and Diddy are, it's different, right? It is not the same. Yes. It's not your dad's lockup. Right. How will this modified plan, though, affect them? And might these race riots move their way into that unit as well? What happens to them? How different will their daily activities be?
Well, like I said, they're in dorms, so you're just going to be on your bed, but there'll be no phones. I mean, if you get a nice cop, I mean, I'm pretty sure actually, no, the phones are probably shut down, so you won't even be able to use the phones at all. You'll basically just be on your bed all day. You go to the bathroom and back to your bed. It depends on the officer that you have on. He might let you sit in the day room. Not supposed to, but you won't be able to go into the room and work out. You have to stay on your bed, and that's it. There's no commissary. There's no movement in the building. There's nothing. Just get your meals, and that's it.
Can't imagine that. I can't imagine any of it, for starters. But I have about 10 seconds left, but I have to ask you this. How long could this go on?
So I've seen it go on for a month. It depends on who's beefing with each other. If it's something that could trickle down to all the prisons, they won't let you move. They don't care how long it is. It has to be cleared up. It's a security risk.
I'm calling you again. Keep your ear to the pipeline and let us know. Call me if you hear anything, and let's find out where this goes from here. Thanks so much for doing this tonight. Good to see you again.
No problem.
Gene Borello joining us again. Okay, still to come, we have really big news in the Menendez case. News I didn't expect to hear. A former boy band star who says that he was raped by Jose Menendez, that's Eric and Lyle's dad, says that didn't just happen one time. His team is telling us that he's got a big plan to tell more of the story sometime very soon. And he's also taking aim at the Los Angeles District Attorney. Spoiler alert, he is not a fan. I have all the details for you right after this.
In
It helps cover everything from cleanings and fillings to crowns and dentures. No deductibles, no annual maximum. For all the details, visit dentalnow.com.
Physicians Mutual, Physicians Mutual.
We have some exclusive breaking news on the Menendez front tonight. The former boy band member who says that Jose Menendez molested him when he was just a kid is now telling the Banfield show that it didn't only happen once. Yeah, I know. I had that response too. And by way of, conversation today, we invited Roy Rossello on this program, and his team told us he can't come on right now, but that more horror stories about Jose Menendez and Roy when he was just a young teen are going to be exposed very soon. Right. I mean, more. How could it get worse? Roy originally told his story to an author named Robert Rand in 2023. And he said that Jose Menendez molested him in a hotel room. And when he said it, it sounded like it might have only been that time. And I don't mean only. I mean, it might have been that one time, but not many times. His story appeared in the Peacock docuseries Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed. Take a look at this.
Yo no podía reaccionar porque eso me estaba tomando cuenta de mi cuerpo. Me drogaron. Y después de eso, yo amanecí en el hotel. ¿Cómo yo llegué al hotel? Yo no sé. Pero cuando yo fui al baño, I was bleeding. Y yo estuve una semana con un dolor terrible.
Now the author says that he and Roy Rossello are in talks for a season 2 of that docuseries. Because since that interview, Rossello has told Rand and his team that he was assaulted a number of times over several years and in different cities and in different countries. Rossello is also speaking out against Los Angeles DA Nathan Hochman, who last month called the sex abuse claims by Lyle and Eric Menendez, quote, untrustworthy. Rossello says, quote, for him, it's untrustworthy, but for me, it is. I was there, and it was not only once. DA Hochman also said that the claims made by Rossello were, quote, inadmissible in Lyle and Eric's bid for a retrial. Rossello hit back, accusing the DA of trying to, quote, cover the mistakes of the past. Chief among them, not accepting that, quote, men and boys are abused as well. Joining me now is the author who brought Roy Rossello's story to light. Robert Rand is an award-winning journalist who wrote the book The Menendez Murders and executive produced the docuseries Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed. Robert Rand, I was floored by this news today from Rossello's team that he can't talk to you now, but wait for it because a lot of big stories about Jose Menendez doing more and worse to Roy are about to come out. Do you know more about this?
I do. The reason that Roy Rossello can't tell everything he knows right now is because he may be a witness in the habeas corpus petition hearings if Judge William Ryan decides that he wants to hold hearings with witnesses to more closely examine this evidence. And Roy has told me that, in the documentary, the Menendez-Menudo Boys Betrayed documentary on Peacock, Roy only told us about one time that he was sexually assaulted by Jose Menendez. And since that documentary, he talked about another time where he was assaulted by Menendez before and after a concert at Radio City Music Hall in an affidavit that's part of the habeas. And since then, he's shared with me that these assaults went on for several years in many different places around the world.
Was it a regular modus operandi? Was it random? Like what specifically was Jose Menendez allegedly doing in these other instances? And I don't mean specific to the assault itself, but just making sure these attacks could happen.
Well, one thing that happened was that Jose Menendez went on tour with Menudo for 3 weeks in Brazil in the fall of 1985. And that's very unusual. I've learned through other people in the music business, the head of a major record label never goes on tour with one act for more than 1 or 2 nights. And during this 3 weeks that Jose Menendez was part of the tour, the members of Menudo were being dressed in drag and makeup after the shows. They were given drugs and alcohol. And if you were a friend of Edgardo Diaz, the creator and manager of Menudo, you were allowed to pick your favorite member of the band and take them back to your room. So there's a lot that went on during that tour, and that's just one tour for 3 weeks.
I mean, just the notion of what you're saying, it's unfathomable. And Robert, do we know if any of the other members of Menudo plan to come forward if they have similar stories, or if they have similar stories and they don't want to come forward? What have you been able to find out?
We had a team of investigative reporters that was working on this documentary, and we know we've obviously focused in on all of the members of Menudo when when Jose Menendez was head of RCA Records. And we've spoken to most of them off the record. It's very difficult for a sexual abuse survivor to come forward and reveal this secret. Many people take these secrets to their graves. And Roy Rossello is a hero for coming forward. And, I was at the news conference with D.A. Hochman on February 21st, and his dismissal of the Menudo evidence was really a slap in the face to sexual abuse survivors everywhere. And I was very encouraged when 5 days after Hochman's news conference, Governor Gavin Newsom came forward and said, we need to do a risk assessment about the Menendez brothers, determine if they would be a risk to the people of California if they are released. And I think that's extremely encouraging. And here we are. This week is the 35th anniversary of when Eric and Lyle Menendez were arrested and charged. Right. And there's new hope.
I'll tell you what, Robert, I understand what D.A. Hochman was doing, and it's a legal thing only. It's not about I don't care about Roy Rossello. It's more just about the legal defense and the technicality of what self-defense requires, not something that he may very well believe, Roy Rossello. He may very well believe Lionel and Eric were molested by their father, but then it gets right to the moment of the murders and whether self-defense in that moment. And that's where I understand what Hochman was saying. But I want you to tell me something else that I found shocking. The way you landed upon this story in the first place was that you interviewed Jose Menendez's personal assistant, and that person revealed something kind of astounding, especially in light of what we're knowing now, that this was a repeated crime.
So back in the spring of '93, just before the first Menendez trial, I interviewed an elderly man named John Peduto, who was Jose Menendez's personal assistant at Hertz and RCA Records. And every conversation I had with him, he kept bringing up that Jose was obsessed with the boy band Menudo and the singer Ricky Martin. And so the first couple times it just blew by me. And when he brought it up the third, fourth, and fifth time, I thought there has to be something going on here. And that's what started me on the investigation of Menudo back in 1993.
You should get a Pulitzer for this, the amount of information that you've uncovered and the effect that it could have on this case. Honestly, maybe not on habeas, but I think on just the public perception and how that plays into potential politics, which plays into, as we all know, what happens in the governor's office, what happens in the DA's office. Robert Rand, come back soon, please.
Okay.
Great to see Robert. And as a reminder, Robert's book is Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed. It's available to stream now, rather the Peacock series. It's great, and it's very informative. I highly recommend it. All right, when you are caught on video pulling the remains of a murdered child down the street in a wagon, your options are slim at best. Insanity defenses, those defenses don't really work very often. But what if you never have to stand trial in the first place? The wagon lady went down that road. I'm going to tell you how it turned out next.
Led me to Ancestry. It breaks down like everything genetically, what that means. That's amazing. Right? It all comes full circle.
There are two ways to sidestep a guilty verdict on mental health grounds. You can plead not guilty by reason of insanity, which happens a lot in the cop shows, but less than 1% of real-life cases. And even in that less than 1% of real-life cases, they really only succeed a fraction of the time, like maybe 30 across the country a year. The other way is to just avoid trial altogether. What? How do you do that? You do it by claiming that you are not competent in the first place. I can't even be in this courtroom. And that means really you cannot understand the charges against you and you cannot aid in your own defense. But the experts have to weigh in on that. Tonight, it appears that a woman named Bunnock Landon, who goes by Hannah, is trying both of those routes, insanity and incompetence. You may not remember her name, but you may remember this video. She was captured, allegedly, on a Ring doorbell cam back in April of 2023. If you see the wagon that she's pulling there, allegedly in it is a 10-gallon bucket. And inside that bucket, the remains of Bella Fontanelle, the 6-year-old daughter of Landon's boyfriend. Hannah Landon allegedly left that little girl's remains, bucket and all, on the front lawn of the little girl's mother's house. And she was arrested soon after that. The coroner said the little girl was strangled and beaten to death before she was stuffed into the bucket. Last spring, Hannah was ruled incompetent for trial. But then later that ruling was reversed and the trial was scheduled. And the defense said, no, I'm going after it again, incompetency. And then last week, the Louisiana Supreme Court said tough nuggets. They upheld the competence ruling, meaning you're okay, we're going to trial. And trial's now set for April 28th, less than 2 months. And Landon's lawyers are on record now asking if they can change her plea from not guilty to not guilty by reason of insanity, which is why I need Jesse Weber. Okay, I don't get it. You're allowed to just plead not guilty, and then you're allowed to say, no, wait, not guilty by reason of insanity, plus I want to be incompetent. And when they say you're fully competent, I want to fight that. Where will this likely end up?
Okay, so two separate things. Let's talk about insanity. Under Louisiana law, in order to properly prove insanity or plead it, you have to say that because of a mental disease or defect, you didn't know what you were doing. You didn't know the difference between right or wrong. Now, on one hand, you have somebody who's accused of dragging a 6-year-old girl in a bucket, middle of the night. Well, not even the middle of the night, 9:30 at night, not even trying to hide it. Car drives by, you would say, oh my gosh, that is definitely the work of somebody who's insane. Here's the problem, Ashleigh. The other way of looking at it, there is evidence to suggest that before she was apprehended, she buried her cell phone and was looking up defense attorneys on her phone as well. That would signify that you knew what you did was illegal and you were afraid of getting caught. So this is, I think, her only defense at this point, given how strong the evidence is against her. I don't know if it's necessarily going to work.
And you and I both know it's so hard to prevail in an insanity defense. It's so rare that it works. Let's talk about, before you even get into the courtroom, saying I'm incompetent. How hard is it for experts to say, yeah, she's incompetent?
Okay, so competency comes up a lot more, and competency is very fluid. Somebody can be competent, somebody can be deemed incompetent, and can go back and forth. It's very different than insanity. What we're talking about with competency is, do you understand the charges against you? Can you actually participate in your defense? Can you make decisions for yourself in this case? That's what we're talking about. And somebody, we saw it in the Lori Valadaybell case, somebody can be deemed incompetent, they're reassessed, and the mental health professionals say you're deemed competent, you can still put forward an insanity defense, right? It's insanity at the time of the crime. It doesn't mean you're insane right now. So two different things, but it looks like she's going to trial in April.
All right, I'm going to have you back. Thank you, Jesse. Always love to hear from you.
You got it.
Jesse Weber, everybody. Okay, just because a cell phone is old and discarded in your closet doesn't mean that it can't call 911. And we all know that now thanks to a 2-year-old boy named Bennett. He's teaching us that. Take a look.
911, an emergency. Emergency donut.
Yes, Bennett got his tiny little hands on Mom and Dad's old cell phone and made some friends in the Moore, Oklahoma Police Department. Can you guess what they talked about next? Just wait. I'm telling you, it's worth it. Often I describe a 911 call as cute, but you haven't met Bennett, a spunky little 2-year-old from Moore, Oklahoma. Bennett got his little mitts on an old cell phone of Mom and Dad's that still had just enough charge in it to call 911. Take a listen.
Hello? Donuts.
Donuts? I want donuts.
Donuts. That's cool.
I want some donuts. Are you going to share your donuts?
Donuts.
Can you tell me what kind of donuts you have? Do you have blueberry donuts?
And how did Moore, Oklahoma's finest respond to Bennett's emergency? Well, with a special delivery, of course.
How are you guys?
Hi.
How are you? Well, we brought you some donuts.
Yes. Okay. You called us about donuts. We came to give you some donuts.
Yeah. What? We got blueberries.
Whoa.
They're awesome.
Bye.
Boop. Cue the public service announcement. Old phones can still call 911 whether they have service or not, as long as they have some charge. And if you were above the age of 2 and place an emergency call for a straight-up non-emergency, do not expect the police to show up at your door with donuts. Thanks for watching. Cuomo's next.
Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, where we are working to keep the facts straight. And that's enough. Is Social Security on the chopping block? No question that would be a political pitfall, but let's take a look at the facts and how they're being twisted, okay? By way of illustration about Social Security, look at another entitlement, Medicaid. President Trump promised to keep entitlements intact, but his party is actively